Hello, friends. This is Dr. Rahul Kamath, and I welcome you warmly to Ursa Medica, the dedicated medical astrology YouTube channel. Today, we are going to be speaking about Varuna in the series of Vedic deities which I have started. I have already discussed Agni in two videos, and today we will speak of Varuna. And I am going to be speaking of the deity Varuna as well as its astrological significance in this presentation. Now, when we speak about Varuna, or when I basically bring to you this presentation, it's very important to understand the context in which uh, the Vedic deity has to be um, understood. When we talk about a god or a deity, we think of a form. We think of Shiva. We think of you know Shiva sitting in meditation. We think of a Ganesha, you know, um, with his typical morphology. But the devas or the deities of the Vedas, they were actually forces of nature, and therefore to understand them, we will have to understand what devas and asuras meant in the early Vedic period. When I say early Vedic, I mean the Rig Veda, essentially, uh, and then bring out what Varuna stands for. Again, as I said, Varuna is a very complex deity, uh, as are all Vedic deities. In fact, they merge into each other. They are almost coterminous, synonymous sometimes. It almost appears that as if their qualities and forms are merging into each other. So, therefore, it is very important to be able to thresh out what exactly Varuna stands for. We will be speaking about uh, these aspects of Varuna. As I said, the Vedic deities, all of them together, they are like forces of nature which interact with each other. So you have a Varuna, you have a Mitra, you have Agni, you have Savitru, you have Maruts, you have Deus, you have so many different deities which represent different aspects of nature or natural law, and therefore it's also to understand the correlations of these with each other is very important. We will of course go into the discussion of Varuna in Jyotish, because in my observation it's a, or Neptune as it is um, described in Western astrology. Um, in a Jyotish software, you see it as Neptune. So in Jyotish, Varuna brings out a lot of interesting observations with respect to what it stands for, and and finally the same discussion, because when you hear the when I say Varuna, when you hear it being spoken, the first thing that comes to your mind maybe is that, of course, isn't it the same as Neptune, or isn't Varuna the lord of the rains? You know, so we will be looking at all of this in today's presentation. Um, if you find that topics keep on getting reiterated, or they keep on getting merging into each other and separating out, only to come together later on, that's the essential nature of the Vedic deities. That is the nature of the way the knowledge is presented in the Vedas. uh, a brief explanation of the abbreviations before I go ahead. RV stands for Rig Ved, AV is Atharva Ved. Atharva Ved would be the later Vedic period. Okay, so you have the Rig Ved, which was sung in the form of the Sama Ved. Then you have the Atharva Ved, which was about occultism, about magical chants and all that, which comes towards the middle and the later Vedic period. And then you have the Satapatha Brahmana, which is actually the post-Vedic period. Just after the Vedas, the Brahmanas came into existence, and there is a reference to Varuna or Vedic deities also in the Brahmanas. So, with this, let me go ahead. Uh, First, let us understand what do devas and asuras really mean in the early Vedic period. So you can imagine this time. This was probably 15,000, 20,000, 25,000 years ago. The early Vedic period is believed to be 35,000 years ago. It started at that time. So that was when the Rig Veda was cognized directly by the seers in the form of sounds, or mantras, or as they came to them. At that time, Deva, the terminology Deva in old Sanskrit is basically beings of light, some that which represents orderly, and that which represent disorder, uh, the beings which actually were responsible for destruction, disorder, the other side of light, darkness, were the asuras. Please don't get this in the wrong way. Devas are not good, asuras are not bad. This isn't about taking sides. This isn't about a value judgment of good and bad, or pap and punya, or even benefic and malefic. It's about a certain flow of nature. It's about the unity of nature with its essential duality of light and darkness. So, asuras and devas are, in a sense, both gods of the Vedas. So, deva and asuras are considered to be both gods in the sense of the omnipotent forces of nature. So, and that's the very important distinction, because if we have to keep this in mind as we study Varuna. And Varuna is by far essentially the greatest god of the Vedas, of the Rig Veda. Okay, in fact, at the time of the early Vedic, middle Vedic period, uh, we also have the Zoroastrianism or the Ahura Mazda. You will realize, or you will know, that Zoroastrianism, or the followers of whom are called Parsis today. Okay, they were originally from Persia, and these were basically fire worshipping um, communities or fire worshipping religion, which actually essentially is an offshoot of the ancient Vedic religion. So, in the Zoroastrianism, the name of their book, or the name of their scripture is Ahura Mazda, and Ahura here is actually Asura, because in terms of phonetics, S could not be pronounced, so it was pronounced as H. Okay, so so therefore, and this Ahura of the Ahura Mazda actually represents Varuna. Okay, so this is a very important thing to know. And what happened was, as the Vedic period progressed, and as the chants and the occultism and the mantras, uh, which came into existence as a later flowering in the Atharva Veda, uh, the the unfortunate interpretation of asuras became somebody demonic. Although a possessor of occult powers is not necessarily demonic. One could always also say that a particular sage or a particular god performed a miracle using occult powers. Okay. But then there was an unfortunate interpretation of this being demonic. So therefore Asura came to be synonymous with demons in the later Vedic or the post-Vedic period. And the word Sura, which stands for God or Devas actually, in the later Vedic, actually was created as an antithesis of Asura. So the word Sura actually has no existence or has no basis in the Rig Veda. Okay, and today we are going to be speaking about the Vedic deity Varuna, who basically finds mention in the Rig Veda, essentially. In fact, in the first 10 sutras of the Rig Veda, you find the mention of Varuna. Varuna is the greatest. When I say greatest, I mean today's generation would understand it as goat, the greatest of all time, the most all-pervasive Vedic deity that ever was or is. And Varuna is actually woven in the fabric of Rig Veda, in the sense that there are only 24 shlokas dedicated to Varuna, and that too most of them are also with Varuna Mitra, who are actually like a pair of deities spoken together. In comparison, say, with Indra, for whom maybe hundreds of shlokas are dedicated. But that notwithstanding, Varuna remains the greatest Vedic god, and I will discuss with you now in the coming slides, in the coming time, why this is so. Now, here we have to understand anthropomorphism. Now, anthropomorphism is actually a personification of a deity. Okay, so I earlier spoke about Ganesha, or let's say a goddess Durga or anything. So there is a certain anthropomorphism. There is a certain personification of the qualities of that deity. Now, in case of Varuna, the personification is less important. What is important is the activity, what Varuna can do, rather than what Varuna looks like. Although there have been a lot of descriptions of Vedic deities, because you have to remember that the Vedas were actually Shruti Smruti Puranokta. So they were actually listened, memorized, and sung. So therefore, there is a lot of emphasis on meter, on singing, on poesy, on poetry. So the Vedic poets were very prolific. So they have described all these deities in terms of, for example, uh, although the focus is on the activity of Varuna, what it can do, and we will come to that in a bit, but the descriptions also are quite vivid. So Varuna is described as having the face of Agni, the eye of the sun, and it is soma drinking. It is covered with beautiful golden fleece, which actually would be the Agni in a sacrifice. So the poets have gone all out. Okay, so we need to kind of discount some of these poetic descriptions and try to see, go beneath the poetic descriptions and actually check out the essence of the deity, in this case Varuna. Now, various Vedic descriptors are there for Varuna, of course in Vedic Sanskrit. Okay, so for example, Varuna is described as Supani. Supani is one with beautiful hands. So hands which stretch out into eternity, hands which stretch all over the world. So again, I want you to understand this more in the form of a energy, more in the form of something which is undifferentiated rather than a person. So when you think of Varuna, think of energy, think of a all-pervasive being rather than a person sitting on a throne or a king sitting on a throne. Varuna also has been described as having spasaha. Spasaha means spies. So spies everywhere, who watch over humanity, who watch over beings, who give back information to Varuna as to what's happening. And Varuna is also a pastyasu, so he is watching over. He is the overlord, watching over the universe. Varuna was the first deity of the Veda. So in a way you can say all deities are inside Varuna. So if the Veda was supposed to be monotheistic, if the Vedas were monotheistic, then the single deity, the one deity would be Varuna. Okay, and of course later on a multitude of deities came out and they all share space in the Vedic pantheon with Varuna. Varuna is also described as a Raja, a Samrat, somebody who holds the Kshatra. Kshatra means somebody who gives protection. The word Kshatriya comes from Kshatra. And also Asura Arya. I have spoken about Asura already. Arya is noble. So the noble Asura, the noble god. Okay, and that comes from its association with Mitra. And we will see that. Now, with this thing, now you can imagine that Varuna is actually the lord of the universe. He is the holder of the laws of nature. He is the Ahura Mazda. He is the Asura Ahura of Zoroastrianism. Okay, he is the one god and is often spoken along with Mitra. Now, Mitra, as you know, is a form of sun. It's the solar element. It is the sun principle. And Varuna activities so much are actually what Mitra does. So Varuna Mitra, actually you can say they are together. So providing energy, providing succor, nutrition, enlightenment to all of the universe, all of the cosmos. And one would have to understand here that when we speak of Varuna and Mitra, we encompass all of existence and all of time, which means day and night also, and present and past and future also, because Varuna is omniscient. So Varuna has been described by poets as having 1,000 eyes. Again, not to be taken literally, please understand this esoterically. esoterically, in a more metaphorical way, and also Mayan. Mayan is somebody who has Maya. Maya here is occult powers. So in a sense also crafty. So being having occult powers and being crafty is a highlight or a hallmark of the Asura. Okay. The gods are pretty boring, or pretty boring, orderly, disciplined kind of people, kind of entities. The asuras are the more interesting entities. They are having more power than the devas. They are crafty, they have occult powers, they can do what they want. They are not bound by discipline or by order. And in fact, let me also remind you here of a small thing, that at the time of the Samudra Manthana, when Amruta or the nectar came out of the churning of the ocean, the only reason why the gods had to beseech Vishnu in the form of Mohini to intervene and give them an unfair advantage was because they knew that the demons, or the asuras, would not allow them their share of Amruta. In fact, had Vishnu not intervened, the asuras would have drunk all the Amruta and become all powerful. And in fact, after this Vedic mythology came into existence of the churning of the oceans, one finds that the importance of Varuna in Rig Veda slowly reduces, and in the later part of the Rig Veda and in the later Vedic period, you find Indra being given a lot of importance, but we will come to that a little later. Right now, still let us stick to the powers of Varuna. So there is a law of Varuna in which the heaven and the earth are held apart. You see, otherwise it's all one. Varuna holds it together, and Varuna comes from the Sanskritic root vra. Vra is to surround. Okay, and Vrita is the cosmic order. So it surrounds, it holds the cosmic order. And Varuna is also spoken of as the lord of the celestial ocean. Now when I say ocean, please don't understand it as water. Celestial ocean is, you can call it the matrix, you can call it, if a galaxy were to be looked upon like an ocean, then the Milky Way is for example one ocean. So we are looking at the celestial ocean, the cosmic ocean here. Okay. Now, as I said, Varuna now is also the regulator of seasons, because we already spoke of Vrita, and the seasons are called actually what? Are called Rutas, in fact. And in the Rig Veda, you find that Varuna is the lord of the light of both day and night. So remember, there is light in day as well as night. You have a different kind of light in the night. You have the reflected light, you have the moon's light, you have a very different kind of energy. In fact, modern physics speaks of a dark energy. And in the Atharva Veda, you find that Varuna is connected with the night more and Mitra with the day. So you see this dichotomy slowly emerging. You see the polarity slowly, you see the duality separate coming into existence, in the later Vedic period. Now in the Satapatha Brahmana, it describes that this world is Mitra, and that world is Varuna. So what I understand from this is that when you say that world, it is the esoteric world. It is the power behind the curtain. Okay. So the manifest is Mitra, the unmanifest is Varuna. And we all know that the unmanifest is much more powerful than the manifest. Think of hydrogen bomb here. Now in Rig Veda, Varuna is also referred to as the regulator of waters. Okay, now waters is very, very mystical and esoteric. We know that Shiva actually, cushioned the fall of, or cushioned the descent of Ganga from the heavens onto the earth in his hair on his jata. So here Ganga is not just physical waters, Ganga is also consciousness. So therefore, when you say regulator of waters, it's very esoteric, very mystical, and we have to give it that kind of a cognizance. The Rig Veda also speaks of the 7 rivers which flow into the jaws of Varuna. Okay, so Varuna is the creator of the rivers, it is also the recipient of the rivers. The 7 rivers could also represent the Saptarshis, the Sapta Nadis. Okay, so several things here. Varuna descends into the sea like Deus. Now, Deus is the Lord of the sky. And incidentally, the Greek word Zeus is actually a corruption of Deus. The Zeus comes from Deus. Okay, and therefore you find that, and the word Jupiter also comes from the word actually Jupiter is related to this because Jew is basically Zeus is Jew and Pitr is ancestors. So the lord of the ancestors. So Jupiter also is kind of linked to this etymology, but that's a separate discussion altogether. Now coming back, Varuna represents the aerial waters, which means also the clouds. So at a mundane level, at a very manifest physical level, Varuna is the bestower of rains. So when we say that Varuna or Neptune, as it was later understood, is the bestower of rains or is the rain god, that's true, but that's not the whole truth. That's like a subset of the larger reality. And in the Atharva Veda and Yajur Veda, Varuna is called as the lord of the water and the child of the waters respectively. So, here you find that objectivity and subjectivity merge, which is often the case with the Sanskrit language, which actually gives its peculiar beauty. And at the time of the Vedas, the Sanskrit language was a means of experiencing the deeper realities rather than a language just for articulation. Now, so we understand Varuna now as somebody who is omniscient, somebody who is a moral lord, somebody who is an upholder of ordinances or laws of nature. And therefore, anybody who is the upholder or the maintainer of these ordinances or laws of nature will obviously penalize once these laws are broken. Okay, so there are therefore these fetters of Varuna. There are these pashas. So if you break the universal law, there is retribution, there is punishment. Okay, so this is like a higher octave of even the dharmic law. So when we speak of dharmic law, and you have dharma, and then you have infringement of dharma, and then there is punishment for that. That's at a much lower level. This is at a cosmological level. You have laws of nature, which if contravened, if taken for granted, there will be immediate retribution from nature itself. And who represents nature or the laws of nature better than Varuna? And therefore, when Varuna punishes, he or she or it is said to be tying up the waters. Okay, and tying up the waters could have a variety of symbolisms. It could mean a curbing of the consciousness. It could mean the drying up of the vitality, for example, and loosening of the fetters. So Varuna also loosens the fetters. So if Varuna is propitiated, if Varuna is happy with you, it will release you from your own as well as your ancestors' transgressions. Okay, so it will actually create a fresh, it will be like a reset for you, a karmic reset, if you may. And therefore Varuna is one with the 1,000 remedies. And in the later part of this thing, the next slide, you will see what I mean by this when I speak of the astrological significance of Varuna. And also one with the wrathful deliverance, as we discussed. And you find there is a huge amount of affinity of Varuna with various deities. So you have, for example, Yama. Yama is the one who actually is a punisher. Yama is the one who takes you to the nether world. Varuna also represents, the darkness. It represents the unmanifest. It represents the unity where the duality of life goes into. Okay, so Adityas, and as I said, there is a huge Mitra connection. So therefore Adityas, whether it is Vivaswat, whether it is Aditya, whether it is Surya, whether it is Savitru, various forms of the sun, there is an affinity of Varuna with them, as well as Agni, the primordial energy of the Rig Veda. Okay, the primordial principle, if I may say so. And one notices, and one should say this clearly, that Varuna has been superseded by Indra in the Rig Veda. You have, once the gods became powerful, particularly after the uh, churning of the oceans, then, and after they partook of Amrit, thanks to Vishnu in the form of Mohini. After that, you find that the cult of Indra begins. So the Indra, the warlord, Indra, the lord of the gods, Indra the deceitful, Indra the wrathful, Indra with his Vajra, and therefore Indra who kills Vritra, another demon stroke malefic asura. Okay. So therefore you find that Indra supersedes Varuna in the Rig Veda, later parts of the Rig Veda. Okay. Now I just want to say here that I have this kind of information which I have presented today is not easily found. I have referred, so this is not exactly something which you can easily Google. Okay. So there have been several references which I have used for this. I would like to mention Max Muller. I would like to mention McDowell. Hillebrand is a German. Hillebrand and Oldenburg are German researchers. Okay, and so they've written books in German which speak about all this. Okay. Now I would like to now speak about Varuna in Jyotish. Now this is something which is very close to my heart, because this channel Arsa Medica is basically a medical astrology channel, and I am a medical doctor. So this is what I do with gusto. Now, in the Rashi of Kumbha or in Aquarius, there is a nakshatra called Shatabhishak. Okay, so if you see Kumbha, you have the first. There are 9 nakshatra padas in each Rashi. Okay, so the first 2 padas of Kumbha are basically of Dhanishta. Okay, the third and fourth pada of Dhanishta. Then you have the entire Shatabhishak nakshatra, the 4 padas of Shatabhishak in Aquarius, and then you have the 3 padas of Purva Bhadrapada in Aquarius. Now, Shatabhishak nakshatra deity is Varuna. Okay. Now, what does Shatabhishak mean? Shatabhishak basically means the 100 physicians of the gods, or the 100 healers. Shata is 100. The word Bhishak comes from Bheshaj, which is Sanskrit for healer. In fact, Agni has also been described as a Bheshaj, and therefore Varuna here in its multiple manifestations here represents healing. So therefore there is a very deep connection of Varuna here with healing, and so you can have diseases which come from nowhere thanks to Varuna. Having understood Varuna, we know that Varuna can create anything. So mysterious diseases and equally mysterious healing, and particularly chronic diseases which have no explanation, you find that this is because of the wrath of Varuna. Now, also to note here is that the planetary lord of Shatabhishak is Rahu. Okay, and you find that Rahu is also Mula Trikon in the sign of Aquarius, which means Rahu is in its absolute element in Aquarius. Rahu can give its best fruits in Aquarius. Okay, and Rahu, remember, is the Asura or the demon Swarabhanu. Okay, the demon Swarabhanu was decapitated at the time of the Samudra Manthan by Vishnu, but that's another story. But so therefore you have here Rahu with his materialistic cravings, or with his karmic, let's say, compulsions, but in its own exalted or its own Mula Trikon sign of Aquarius. So Rahu becomes a healer here. So somebody with Rahu in Aquarius in Shatabhishak would be somebody with a very enhanced sense of spirituality, a spirituality which somebody with occult powers also, which can be used for the good of the world. So think of Varuna here. So we have the Varuna influence, which is clearly reflected in this description which I just gave you. Now, another point to note here is that if you look at the zodiac from Aquarius till Pisces. Okay, so we are looking at essentially almost 3 nakshatras. I'm leaving out Dhanishta, the last 2 padas of Dhanishta, because uh, that's not germane to the discussion. But I'm talking about Shatabhishak, which is entirely in Kumbh. Then I'm talking of Purva Bhadrapada, which is 3/4 in Kumbh and 1/4 in um, Pisces or Meen Rashi, and then I'm talking about Uttara Bhadrapada. I don't want to talk about Revati, because with Revati the whole energy changes. But these 3 nakshatras you find actually is like a huge cosmic churning, a kind of a cosmic shake-up happening. So you have Varuna here in charge of Shatabhishak, and then that leads to the Aja Ekapada. The Aja Ekapada is a very powerful deity. It's a one-legged goat. It's also supposed to be a form of Bhairava, a kind of a malefic, if you may, Shiva. Okay, so somebody which will shake up things, which will actually disturb the status quo, which will create a post-reset reality kind of a thing. So it's a Ugra Nakshatra. Purva Bhadrapada is known to be a Ugra Nakshatra. And then you have Ahir Budnya, which is the next deity, which is the deity of Uttara Bhadrapada. And Ahi here is snake. Okay, and is the cosmic snake, and you have Budnya, which is the celestial ocean. So again you have Varuna here, because Ahir Budnya is actually within the domain, within the hegemony, if I may say so, of Varuna. So therefore you find here the entire influence of Varuna actually is right up to Ahir Budnya, and then after Ahir Budnya comes Revati, which is a nakshatra which the nakshatra deity is Pushan, the nurturer. And that's the beginning of spring. That's the beginning of the Vedic spring, right? Because sun enters Aries afterwards, immediately after Pisces. So just before, it is said that the darkest hour is just before dawn. So if here you find that Varuna, or in the form of a redeemer, a cosmic redeemer of sorts. Okay, so this is my interpretation of these 3 nakshatras in the context of what we are discussing today, Varuna. Now, let us now talk about Varuna and Neptune. Now, in the later Vedic period, that means in the Satapatha Brahman and beyond, uh, you know, as you find that the Greek philosophers came into existence, and you have the Hellenic influence, which is the Greek influence, and the Roman astrology. You find the conception of Neptune, which is the lord of the oceans. As I said, in the later Vedic period, Varuna became more associated with water. So therefore, Poseidon, which is the Roman god, if I'm correct about this, so Poseidon became more synonymous with Neptune. And Neptune in Western astrology today is considered to be the higher ruler of Pisces. So traditionally we say Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces, but Neptune is actually the higher ruler of Pisces. And point to note here is that Pisces is also the Rashi, the Meen Rashi, or the zodiac sign in which Venus is exalted. So you have a sign in which Devaguru Brahaspati or Jupiter and Daitya Guru Venus or Shukracharya are both in their element. Venus exalted, Jupiter lord of the Pisces, and who is the overlord, who is the absolute Thanos here? Neptune sitting on top, which is basically a refurbished Varuna. And therefore, we see the importance of Neptune here. And specifically in medical astrology, I have seen several charts, particularly of people with chronic diseases or people who have sudden mortality happening. For example, in which you find that Neptune is in a Gandanta position, particularly, let's say, Neptune at the Aghora Mula, the Jeshta Mula Gandanta, at the junction of Scorpio and Sagittarius. It will give probably sometimes extremely bad results, of course, depending on where it is placed. But in this particular position, Neptune will give catastrophic results. Neptune is also responsible for certain generational curses. If you recollect earlier, I spoke that Varuna will also release you from your own as well as ancestors' curses. So Neptune here, particularly in the 5th house, say in the D1 chart, in the D9 chart, supposing you find if it is not well aspected, if it is you can see this correlation also. And Neptune in the body stands for the pineal gland. Now you know that the pineal gland is synonymous with the third eye. Okay, and the pineal gland is actually, it's part of the body, but it is also connected to the energy axis of the body. It is also a kind of antenna. It's also a spiritual sort of a transmitter. There are certain cells in the pineal gland which we still do not know the function of. Okay, so the pineal gland is under the adhipatya or the dominion or the signification of Neptune. Okay, so and pineal gland has a certain overview kind of a relationship with the pituitary gland, which is an important gland for all bodily functions, right? So this was my take about Varuna. I hope you liked it. And if you like what I do, please like my channel and share this with people who may be like-minded, and subscribe to my channel. It's a good feeling to see the number of subscribers growing. Okay, and if you wish to consult me, this is my email ID. Thank you so much, and God bless, and wait for my next one.